Welcome, I'm Holly Draney with Riley Blake Designs, and we're going to get started on making 2 blocks from the American Independence Block of the Month quilt. This quilt was designed by me to pay homage to the 13 original colonies. So we have 13 different star blocks for the 13 colonies. Now, some of the star blocks have similarities, so that's why we're doing 2 today, and sometimes we might even do 3 in a video. Because there's so many similarities, it's going to be really seamless to go from one to the next. So first up, we're going to start with New Hampshire, and this is the beautiful New Hampshire quilt block. New Hampshire was the 3rd colony established in 1623 by John Mason, and he named it New Hampshire because he came from Hampshire, England. That's just kind of fun trivia for you to know. All right, let's get started. Let's pull everything over that we need to begin. I've got all my blocks labeled. Now, I've used these great clips rather than pins to label them, and we just so happen to have this cute tin to commemorate the Semiquincentennial, or the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. So I've used those quilty clips here to mark my fabrics with the labels that you printed out originally, and we're going to stay very organized this way, and I really like it. So I have already gone ahead and I've made my half square triangles, and I've made my flying geese in anticipation of getting ready for this quilt block. Now we're going to take 2 of the half square triangles that we made and 2 of the red squares that are letter C, and we're going to sew them together. This one's going to go here, this one's going to go here, and we're going to take it and sew it. Now I just want to show you, not everyone has a machine that auto cuts, and if that's the case, you might want to use a leader and an ender when you're sewing to help you, one, not waste thread, but also keep your thread from breaking or your needle from unthreading, or your machine not threading. It just is an easy way to keep it going. But if you have the automatic thread cutter, you don't need to do this step. But I just thought I would show you because my home machine does not have that threader. All right. So now that I've sewn them, I'm going to trim them apart. We're going to go over and press them. I'm going to heat set the seam, and then I'm going to press towards the square that is not pieced. And then I'm going to hurry and put a clapper on it and just leave it for a second to kind of absorb some of that heat and moisture, and then come over here. All right, so we have this one here, we have this one here. So this is, now we're going to take these 2 units and sew them together to create 1 unit. And by prepping everything and getting my half square triangles done ahead and getting them squared up, I don't have to always square up at every step. It allows me a little bit of freedom as I begin to assemble. At this stage, because there are so many seams intersecting, I'm actually going to press my seam open at this point so that I can just help reduce that bulk, and my quilt block will be nice and flat. I'm going to set that there. Okay, and so this is the corner unit that you will need, and you'll need to make 4 of these units. Next up, we've already got our flying geese, but you can see that these are just a little bit unique in that the half square triangles here, or the triangles on this big rectangle, are the light, but in this one, the light is the rectangle and dark for the squares, for the triangles. Just kind of gives it a cute little look, and you'll see that. So we're going to take them and we're going to sew them together. All right. Take it, heat set that seam, open it up, and again, I do not want bulk, so I am going to press this seam open so that I can try and reduce as much bulk as I can. If you choose to press towards the piece that has the fewer seams, or how the fabric, sometimes your fabric will just tell you where it wants to be pressed, and you can either fight that like I am right now and pressing my seam open, or you can go the direction the fabric automatically wants to go. But I'm going to go ahead and use my clapper on there, leave it for just a second so that it can absorb some of that heat, use the weight of that clapper as well is nice. And then I have my flying geese unit. So I've taken 2 flying geese together and created this. You're going to need to do 4 of those. So then, once we have 4 of those, we're ready to go on to the next steps. All right, let me show you here. I have already started to sew, but basically what you're doing is you're taking your 4 corner units and your flying geese units and laying them out with your center square. But I'm just going to show you how these go together really easily. And you can use some of those seams to help you. You can pin if you prefer. If you pin, make sure that you're pinning to the right of the seam and then go back towards the fold of the seam there. So that when you're sewing it together, you can easily pull out that pin without sewing over it. All right. So I come over here, and now we're going to, again, heat set that seam. And then on this one, again, I've got so many seams coming together, I'm going to press mine open. It's totally up to you how you do yours. This is just how I prefer to do mine so that I get a nice flat seam. I'm just going to let that sit with the clapper for a second. And then come back over here and add this other corner unit to it. Now, sometimes it just kind of nests in there so nicely that you don't even have to pin it. But if you want to be safe, pinning is always a good idea. I never used to pin when I first started quilting. I have my sister laugh at me from time to time, remembering how she would say, "You're not pinning." And I'd say, I don't have time. But the funny thing is, as we get older, we get more patient, not only with our children and those around us, but we also get more patient with ourselves, and we allow ourselves the time to pin, because we know in the end it's going to be a better result. Okay. So here we go. We've got this unit. I've already sewn these together here. And then we're going to go here. Now this one I am going to pin. Highly recommend. We've got a lot of seams throughout this edge here on both sides of the fabrics, front and back. So I just want to make sure that I'm pinning and I'm matching up those seams as best I can. Go here. And again, try and go to the right of your seam and put the pin head that way, the point of the pin towards you. Okay, so there, we're going to take this over here. All right, come over to your pressing station, heat set that seam, and then because again, those bulky seams, I am going to press this one open and help my block lay as flat as possible. Now, one thing you may not know, but when you're sewing on one machine and you go to another machine, you're going to have a little bit of discrepancy in your seam allowance, because that's just how it works. Each machine performs differently. Even if it's the same make or model, it can perform differently. So I am seeing here that I've got a little bit of a issue with one of my seams being too short, and you can see how this is happening. You see how this is twisting? And that's because this was all sewn on my home machine, and these I've sewn together here. So when I get home, I will probably unpick that and fix that. But essentially you can see how nice this turned out here on this edge. You can see how it's supposed to look. But just so you know, that's why this one is not looking perfect. And that's okay. Perfection is unattainable. That's all there is to it. So I'm just going to go ahead and show you that one. When I get home, I'll fix it on my own machine. But then look at how lovely that turned out, the original block here that I did sew all on my home machine, and it does work out really perfectly. So this is New Hampshire, and now we're going to tackle Massachusetts. Let's pull out everything we need to make our Massachusetts block. Isn't that so cute? I love the fussy cutting here, commemorating that signing of the Declaration of Independence in 1776. And I'm going to pull over everything we need to get started. So again, I've used my quilty clips, and I'm keeping myself nice and organized here so that I can get started. I've gone ahead, I've made my half square triangles, I've done my stitch and flip, my flying geese, and my square and a square. So once those are there, what we need to do is sew this unit together. And again, this will be like our corner unit of our quilt block. So I'm going to sew this here. Press it with a heat press, that seam, set it. And then I'm going to press towards that dark fabric. Put the clapper on it and then come back. So this one does need a little bit of a trim. So I want to make sure that I am keeping everything as straight as possible as I sew so I end up with a really nice result. All right. Now that I have that, I'm going to take it and sew it to the unit we did that was the stitch and flip. Take it to our machine here. Quickly sew that seam. Heat set that seam allowance. And then on this one, it does not really want to play nice just to press one direction or the other. So I am going to press that seam open. But if yours is going to be nice and press one direction, you're welcome to press it that way. I'm going to set it here with the clapper, let it absorb some of that moisture and heat, and then bring it back over here. So this is your corner unit. All right. So let's take it and show you where we are now. So you can see I have my 4 units here that I've sewn onto my flying geese. We're going to do the same here now, but make sure when you're doing this that you're looking at the pattern and you're going to need to rotate your block the correct direction. So this little small square or rectangular unit should be the outer corner of this entire block. So you do have to rotate those. But let's go ahead and create this top row of the block. Not sure if I mentioned you do need to make 4 total of those corner blocks before you can begin sewing your block together, or 4 corner units. All right, here. And then I'm going to take it over here, make sure it lines up nice, and sew my next unit. Really had a lot of fun kind of thinking about what I was going to be teaching in this sew along and kind of preparing a little bit of trivia around each block to share with you, because I mean, I remember my children learning about American history in 5th grade, and I'm certain they did in junior high and high school, but I don't remember what grades they were. And it's been so many years since those were my classes that I have forgotten some of the details about all of the original 13 colonies. So I just thought it would be fun to share that with you as we go along. All right, so I've already pre-sewn this flying geese to my center square in a square. Let's sew the second flying geese to the other side. Get that done, and then we'll be ready to sew our rows together and we'll have a finished block. All right. I need to go back and visit Boston. I was there for a very short visit this summer, but it's so rich in history, such a cute, cute environment and area, and I just need to get back there and visit Massachusetts again. Mine was just a short visit to Boston, but even the streets of Boston were so cute. All right. We're having this issue again where I'm sewing on a different sewing machine than my prepped blocks. So you can see how this center section is a little bit shorter than my outer section here. My top and bottom rows are just a little off, but that is only because I'm sewing on two different machines. So definitely don't recommend you doing that in your sewing, but I can go ahead and show you how these will need to be sewn together. And then I'll probably take them home and fix them. One thing I can show you in this step is making sure that your peaks of your square in a square and your flying geese line up nicely. You don't want to cut those peaks off in your seam allowance, so making sure that you have 1/4 of an inch between the peak of that seam and your edge is going to be key to having a nice finished block. So definitely take that into consideration when you're doing your pinning. That'll make your finished block be really, really nice. Okay. One more seam, and then we can press our block. All right, so I'm going to heat set that seam both here and here. And then again, I've got so many seams connecting at different areas that I am going to press that seam allowance open because I want my block to lay nice and flat. That's something that I really try to achieve when I'm sewing and quilting, is to have a nice flat block, because as you begin to sew blocks together, it makes your process so much nicer if you have nice, flat, straight blocks. And then turn it around and do the other side. And then I'm going to turn it over and I'm going to use our nice quilt block clapper. And this also helps that the weight of this quilt block clapper and the size of it just makes it easier to get all of those seams under the clapper so that it can absorb the moisture and the heat. The extra weight will help it go flat. All right, so you can see how that one is finished. You can see that this particular one, I did do the cute ship. There's different ways that you can make or fussy cut these blocks, and they're all gonna turn out great. No matter what element or icon you use for your fussy cutting, you're gonna have a great end result. So there we go. We did our first 2 blocks of the sew along, and we'll see you next time where we're actually gonna be sewing 3 blocks.